Okay, welcome Multnomah Village, week 103, Justice for Qadira.
Good morning, Multnomah Village.
And I brought my tablet today because we're going to start with an article about who Ida B. Wells was. Because I feel that her memory is being very much dishonored and disrespected in this community, despite the fact that we changed the name of the local high school to her name, specifically, supposedly, to honor her. So let's talk about who Ida was briefly. I found a good article about her.
Folks, we keep coming down here because we're trying to get justice for our daughter, but while we're trying to do that, there's other things that are going on in our world that we are having dissatisfaction with.
And we just can't help but notice. So, I mean, we do talk about other things besides what's going on with our specific quest for justice, just because there's just so many things wrong in this community, in this city, in this country, in this world. So let me read this article about Ida B. Wells, because I think it's really important. I don't think the kids at Wilson really understand who Ida B. Wells was, and I don't think their parents do either. So here's her life story. Ida B. Wells was not yet 3 when the Civil War ended and slavery was abolished, so she had no personal memory of being enslaved. But she heard her parents' stories and saw the scars on her mother's back from beatings she had suffered. Slavery was a stark reality for Ida, but her own childhood was spent in and shaped by Reconstruction. From 1865 to 1877, the federal government established the ground rules for southern states' readmission to the Union, and federal troops kept order in the South. Black Americans gained freedom, citizenship, and the right to vote during these years. They also contended with fear, poverty, and the sometimes violent hostility of many whites. Ida grew up in Holly Springs, Mississippi, the oldest of 8 children. Her parents, James and Elizabeth Wells, learned to read after slavery and made sure their children were educated. James had been trained as a carpenter and was able to support his family without becoming a sharecropper, the fate that kept so many blacks in conditions similar to slavery. He was self-sufficient, determined, and proud. When his former owner's wife asked him to visit, he refused. In 1867, when black men in Mississippi could vote for the first time, his white employer told him to vote for the Democrats, but again he refused. When Ida was 16, her family faced a terrible tragedy when her parents and baby brother died of yellow fever. The 6 remaining Wells children were orphaned, and Ida suddenly found herself head of family. She went to work as a school teacher. She also continued her own studies, taught Sunday school, and did the family's cooking, washing, and ironing. 3 years later, in 1881, Ida and her 2 youngest sisters moved 50 miles away to Memphis, Tennessee to live with their aunt, where Ida continued to teach. The South was changing. Reconstruction was over. A harsh new system called Jim Crow was gradually constricting black people's rights and freedoms and enforcing segregation, often through intimidation and violence. Jim Crow was eventually written into law.
Hold on, honey. Can we address these people really quick?
Wow.
This is, so you're using your white privilege.
Okay.
Again, Juneteenth just happened, right?
Can't even read an article about this woman.
You do realize you're white people, right? We're black people.
We're trying to read an article about Ida B. Wells right now, who this community is supposed to
realize how
honor and
racist
suffer.
you look right now?
It's not.
Is that what you want to convey?
So inappropriate.
Is that what this community is all about?
That's
is that what
fair.
you want to represent?
I just want to say that it's not
racist.
It's not.
Is that what you want? Is that what you want? I know you're turning away and walking away.
Yeah.
But is that what you want?
Thank you. Wow, that was ugly. That was really ugly.
It was so ugly.
Wow, it's the old people.
Like, I was like, is she unwell?
I don't. Right. I mean, my God,
It's terrible.
Folks, we're just trying to educate this community about racism that is actually happening still to this day here in this community. Okay? And for you to actually be demonstrating that, you're just making our point for us. Okay? You're making our point for us. Okay? for you to be so rude and so this is not a good look for this community. Don't you want this community to be a better place, a more inclusive place?
I know.
Don't you want there to be diversity here?
Okay, we're going to try to keep reading about Miss Ida B. Wells.
You named your high school after, friend.
Yeah, we named our high school. Thank you. Thank you so much for stopping, you guys. Okay, let's get back to who Ida was. And I'm glad I'm out here reading this because I don't want our children thinking we named Ida B. Wells, that this is the way we honor her. I want to actually honor this woman, and that's what we're trying to do right now. So when she was 22, Ida bought a first-class ticket on a train from Memphis to Holly Springs and took a seat in the ladies' car, something she had done for the previous... Oh, wait a minute. Oop, I missed a paragraph. Sorry, I have to go back because I got really a little confused with all the screaming. The South was changing, Reconstruction was over, a harsh new system called Jim Crow was gradually constricting black people's rights and freedoms and enforcing segregation, often through intimidation and violence. Jim Crow was eventually written into law, but much of it was based on social customs and the whims of individuals, as Ida learned. When she was 22, Ida bought a first-class ticket on a train from Memphis to Holly Springs and took a seat in the ladies' car, something she had done for the previous 2 years. This time, however, the conductor told her to move. Ida resisted, and when she tried to drag her from her seat, she bit his hand. Two men helped him forcibly remove her as white passengers applauded. After she was removed from the train, she sued the railroad for damages and won, but her triumph was short-lived as the railroad won on appeal. Jim Crow was becoming the law of the land. In 1886, when she was 24, Ida lost her teaching job after she criticized conditions in the Memphis schools. She had written a few articles for newspapers and decided to turn to journalism full-time. 3 years later, she bought a share in the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight and was appointed its editor. She was the first female co-owner and editor of a black newspaper in the U.S. She began writing articles and editorials under the name Lola. The major point in Ida's life came in 1892. Her friend Thomas Moss, a Memphis letter carrier and grocer, was lynched by a mob after confrontations with rival white grocers. Shocked, Ida brought a pistol and wrote an editorial urging African Americans to move out of Memphis for their safety. Then she began to focus her work on the rise in lynchings in America. By the 1890s, lynching was a terrorist campaign to solidify white control of the South. Victims were often black men accused of raping white women. Ida doubted these accusations, noting that often the charge was made after a man had been hanged or burned or shot or beaten. She thought it was more likely that victims had been in a consensual relationship with a white woman or, like her friend Thomas Moss, were businessmen who threatened rival whites and had no connection to white women at all. Ida wrote a series of anti-lynching editorials. The last one suggested that white women could find black men romantically appealing, and she headed north for 3 weeks as it hit the newsstands. Editors of white newspapers in the South reprinted the editorial and called for white men to avenge their women. While she was in New York, Ida learned of threats against her and against her friends and family. The offices of her newspaper were burned. It was clear she could not return to Memphis. From then on, she lived in the North, mostly in Chicago, and changed her pen name to Exiled. Ida documented 728 lynching cases that had occurred between 1884 and 1892, using research by the Chicago Tribune. Within months of her friend's murder, she wrote a collection of articles under the title Southern Horrors. She focused less on grisly details and more on the false accusations made against the victims. Her goal was to arouse the conscience of America, and she became America's best-known crusader against lynching. Ida was also a staunch supporter of women securing the right to vote. She published How Enfranchisement Stops Lynching in Original Rights magazine in 1910, showing that when black voters in Illinois elected a black state legislator in 1904, he worked to pass a law against mob violence.
Why are you being so racist right now?
I suggest you go home and pray to Jesus, get on your knees, wash your heart if that's possible. I don't know if it's
wash
possible.
your heart, ma'am.
But I will pray for you. I will pray for you because that's the only thing that can be done for you. That type of hate is it just breaks a person. And I can see you are a sad, lonely, broken person. And I do feel sorry for you. I really do. It creates a broken world when we have people walking around like that, so full of hate. Let's get back to this, because I really do want to honor this woman. She was so accomplished. She co-founded, let's just start back at the beginning of the paragraph. I'm sorry that some people are being so rude. Ida was also a staunch supporter of women securing the right to vote. She published How Enfranchisement Stops Lynching in Original Rights magazine in 1910, showing that when black voters in Illinois elected a black legislator in 1904, he worked to pass a law against mob violence. She co-founded the Alpha Suffrage Club in Chicago in 1913, which became the largest black women's suffrage organization in Illinois. In addition to supporting women's efforts to obtain the vote, the Alpha Suffrage Club taught women how to be politically active and promoted black candidates for office. Ida marched in the 1913 suffrage parade in Washington, D.C., when many of the organizers resisted black women's participation in the parade. After black women were told they would march in segregated sections, the NAACP organized letter and telegram protests. The parade organizations relented, and black suffragists, including Ida, marched in their state and occupational delegations. She continued her work for decades, traveling abroad to decry lynching and raise money, and working with women's clubs to encourage political participation, even running for state office herself. In 1922, she supported an anti-lynching bill before Congress. Because of Democratic opposition, the bill failed, as did all federal efforts to end lynching, white supremacy's weapon of terror. In 2018, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice opened in Montgomery, Alabama, to commemorate more than 4,400 African-American men, women, and children lynched between 1877 and 1950. In 2020, Ida was awarded a posthumous Pulitzer Prize in recognition of her outstanding and courageous reporting about lynching. So I wanted to talk about and honor this woman because I do think that it's important that we think about how much, the struggle to integrate has been fought really on all sides. As those people were screaming at us, we had a mother and her daughter come up and stand with us. We have to remember that this fight isn't over. Wow. See what I mean? I mean, it's the anger at the free speech. I just got called a cocksucker. I mean, wow. And I hate to say that out loud for all the kids to hear, but this is the abuse me and my husband take up here for this rally. This is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about Ida. Ida
This is a protest, folks. It's going to be loud. So.
And Ida was a black investigative journalist at a time when, you could be lynched for doing anything like that, for just getting up and walking out your door. And she accomplished so much, even though her parents died, and at a time when women really had no rights. So when people come by and they yell and they scream, I mean, times have not changed that much. And that's what me and my husband are up here fighting for is, you can't just run around and change all the names of your buildings and parks, but then have no actual respect or honor for the people whose names that you are now using.
And we really need people to change their hearts,
right,
which is not happening.
And we need to recognize our history. Ida, if she lived today in this community, she would be all over covering this protest. And I'm sure she would give us a fair shake in whatever paper she printed an article in. Some guy that just drove by said, move to Russia. Hey, buddy, I'm not sure that I'm not in Russia because, I know I'm in America, but the fact that we cannot get one single article printed about this, or have a real fair conversation in the media about what our family experienced.
Here in this community.
Here in this community, here in America, I think it's very unfair. We really need to have a conversation about our justice system. I want to highly recommend, there is a movie on Netflix right now, it's called Take Care of Maya. And I'm highly suggesting not just parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anybody who has a child in their life that they love, go watch this movie, because it is about how when children are taken to hospitals and they have suspicious injuries or illnesses, how they can be, immediately moved from the home on the words of a child abuse pediatrician.
So this is actual medical abduction.
So this is medical abduction.
Kidnapping.
And so this girl was medically kidnapped for, I believe, 87 days. And spoiler alert, her mother does end up committing suicide. So it's a very, very heart-wrenching story. Her family also embarks on a court battle against Johns Hopkins Hospital. And they're pretty much getting nowhere, which is another sad thing to watch. Just watching how broken she is about the broken system, and how there is no justice for her mother and the loss of her mother and what her family went through. Because after this little girl was medically kidnapped, it all came to pass that she had exactly the illness that had been diagnosed by other doctors. I mean, her parents were taking her to the actual doctor, and then their daughter ends up getting medically kidnapped because they feel that the doctors they're taking her to aren't doing the right thing, and so on and so forth. There's so much within the CPS system that needs to be reworked, because there's just really no value placed on the parent-child relationship, and no real effort to actually keep families together. And I've talked to other families going through this. Me and my husband are on completely other side of this, because our daughter's abusers, they worked so hard to protect them. That system actually didn't go into play. Their child wasn't removed. Our child wasn't removed. Our child got no treatment. Their child got no treatment. So on and so forth. But if you watch this movie, Take Care of Maya, you'll kind of see what, Todd and Amy were shielded from. Because child abuse investigations, they tear families apart, and some parents do commit suicide. Kids commit suicide because they can't get back to mom and dad. We have a very cold system once a child is pulled into the legal system. The judges, the lawyers, nobody cares. And, that's something I've been talking about, even connecting it back to our homeless problem. People seem to think, if you keep coming up with plans that don't include people getting direct help and care, essentially 24 hours a day, they think they're going to solve something, and you can't. So, just looking back on human history, one of the things that we haven't been doing as human beings is we're just not doing a good job taking care of one another. We do a really great job frustrating each other, hurting each other, and I feel, causing each other intentional stress. The saddest part of this movie really was, at the last court hearing before this woman committed suicide, she begged the judge to hug her daughter. She just wanted to hug her daughter. And this is a woman, by the way, who was cleared, of any allegations of abuse. Her daughter was actually sent back home to be with the family, but the judge said no. The judge said no. She couldn't even hug her own daughter. I know families. I've talked to plenty of families now who have gone through this. And it is really disgusting. I mean, we are not doing enough to listen to one another, help one another. It's a big problem just in human society today. And just seeing people up here, because I feel like the village, unfortunately, and I hate to give this report, it's like we go downtown and we speak every Friday. There's a lot of drug addicts and mentally ill people downtown. They are not nearly as cruel as the people up here, which is really, really incredible. Entitlement seems to equal cruelty. And that is a concern, for all of us, really, because you have some very entitled people running the world now. And I think their cruelty knows no bounds because they have such disregard for people. So for those of you, looking to, look into this deeper, and I suggest if you have a child or a grandchild, niece, nephew, whatever, any family at any time can be targeted through the CPS system. It's almost like experimentation, in my opinion, the way they rip families apart. But I also, it gives me a very good idea as to what Rex Burkholder was protecting his brother from when they threw Qadira out of the hospital, when they failed to treat her, as they ignored this entire thing. They didn't want Todd and Amy put through the very system that they have no problem inflicting on thousands of parents.
Yeah, just the general public.
And it's very devastating. I mean, having your child ripped away, allegations of abuse, very, 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 very devastating for families. And there's a lot of families who do not overcome that. So, I mean, a lot of times when I sit up here and I say, praise Jesus, we're up here. I mean, the things that we've had to endure.
It's just unreasonable, folks.
On the backside of that, trying to figure out, in our case, why these child protections didn't go into place, but also on the other side, seeing how when these rules and regulations go into place and parents are absolutely innocent, how brutal they can be, because there's such a disregard, like I said, for the parent-child relationship. And I do believe that's a global thing. It's kind of like, the doctor's going to know better. The teacher's going to know better.
Everybody knows better than the parents.
Yeah, let's clear the parents out of the way. And that's really what you see in this story is mom was really vilified. And I really related to that because I would say that I definitely felt that.
And that's what these people did. They vilified my wife. Mm-hmm. Okay, the attorneys, the judges, the doctors, all vilified my wife.
It was
treated her like it was all her fault that our daughter was abused by these people.
Yeah, and that I was crazy and making things up. I mean, the gaslighting, especially to a protective parent it's incredible. And so my heart goes out to anybody who has experienced that or who is experiencing that. I think wealthy families experience it less. They also get more protection, but you're also not immune. I mean, kind of everybody's a target because as the movie, showed, the word of the child abuse pediatrician is gold. It doesn't matter. I mean, other facts are completely disregarded over what the child abuse pediatrician says.
Over the opinion.
The opinion, yeah.
Of the child abuse pediatrician. And it's just the opinion, like, They don't even have to back it up with facts. All they have to have is a suspicion of abuse. That's it. And it overrules any facts already established in the child's case.
It also just overrules, like I said, it overrules that parent-child relationship. They can issue a no-contact order. They can make your life so horrible you do want to kill yourself. And like I said, in this instance, this woman did kill herself. I mean, this little girl lost her mother while she was medically kidnapped. She was only like 10 years old. So what me and my husband saw is really the other side of that. Like, if a wealthy person, somebody who's well-connected, a politician, they start abusing their kid, they're abusing other kids, they're completely shielded from that system. They never have to suffer at all. I mean, Todd and Amy didn't go through a single investigation, never had to sit down with a police officer, never had to explain really what they were doing. They did go to court and admit to everything they were doing, but they just chuckled and laughed and everybody thought it was funny.
Yeah, and then they made us pay our daughter's abusers.
Right, and now they just pretend, to the general public. It's really easy to pretend that we're just a bunch of liars and making this up and we're exaggerating. You can say all kinds of things when when you're running a rumor mill and you
have complete control over the media.
Yeah, you have complete control of the media, which again, the guy that rode by and said move to Russia. Well, I mean, here. There's complete control of the media.
They do.
Absolutely. There's complete control of the media, which is so hard for Americans now to have conversations,
Genuine
conversations that matter. We can't even get a word in edgewise. It's difficult to talk about actually cleaning up our communities because we're basically stuck just accepting the suggestions of the people in charge, and they don't have any good suggestions.
No, because their focus is not caring for people. Their focus is making money. That's all these people care about. And it's really time that we had a discussion about that, because if we keep going in that direction where all of us, all we care about is money, or at least the people in charge, all they care about is money, if we allow that to go on, folks, we are headed directly off a cliff.
It comes down to, the more I look at like our homeless situation, and the more I've back and forth with people about it, I mean, what I gather is, like, when I talk about, people being put into actual, homes, like in an adult foster care model where they're getting 24-hour care, help, a locked room, things like that. What I'm finding is what people really, the issue there, the barrier is people don't feel that people deserve that. So even if you could open up a bunch of businesses and this could be easier way to make sure that people coming out of recovery or coming off the street, have a place to lay their head, nobody feels they deserve that. So that conversation is completely set to the side. I actually had somebody tell me the other day that, oh, well, congregate camping, this is like a nice way to, help these people on their feet. Nobody wants to do that. We have to start creating a world people want to be a part of. And I will say, when I look at the CPS system, you've got to be doing everything in your power for reunification. Even if a parent, I believe, has been abusive, completely ripping the child away, no contact whatsoever, all of that kinds of stuff. The way the system is implemented, it's just devastating for families. And then for me, it infuriates me because I know that it's not that they have a complete lack of compassion. They had nothing but compassion for Todd and Amy. I mean, the entire neighborhood had nothing but compassion for Todd and Amy. It was, poor Todd and Amy, they burned up and abused Qadira, and oh, these people keep talking about it, and oh my God, they took their daughter to the hospital and created records around it. Oh my God. That was the concern. The concern was never the child or how the child was doing. Our daughter has never been the concern, and it wasn't just, she wasn't the concern of the people who abused her. She wasn't the concern of the hospitals we took her to, and so on and so forth.
She wasn't the concern of the legal community. She wasn't the concern of the political community. She's not the concern of the media here. They're very concerned about continuing to suppress this story, and just so that nobody even knows that it even happened.
And to push the status quo when we have a system here that really, really, really needs to change. I mean, from our child welfare systems, all of our institutions need to be far more geared towards taking care of people. Now, I know there's two schools of thought here because I'm watching it unfold, which is, there's the people who think we just got to get rid of a bunch of people and then we'll fix it. And then, then there's where we are, which is, I don't think that getting rid of people solves anything. I think that's what humanity has been doing since the dawn of time. We're warring, we're hating on each other, we're enslaving one another. That's another thing about Juneteenth that I think Ida B. Wells would be all over. Me personally, when I read about her life, I feel so inspired by the woman that she was, because she was such a hard worker, and that's something that I identify with. But she would have been all over the fact that Nike and Adidas are, being investigated. There's a congressional investigation into their use of slave labor over there in China. Because, we're celebrating holidays like Juneteenth. We have a black community here accepting millions from Phil Knight, all these people are actually enslaved, building his product. So the conversation of ending slavery, we're just getting started globally. You know what I'm saying? Globally, we need to be having much bigger conversations of how we treat people, how we value their work, how we value their participation in society, because treating people like they don't matter has gotten us to this point in human history. I personally, me and my husband, we would like to build a future where when our kids look back, they don't see just a bloodbath, chaos, mayhem, as far as the eye can see. But that's going to take having some real conversations, and we can't just skirt around issues and pretend that everything's fine. And I feel like that's really what the Portland leadership is trying to do here. Everywhere I go now, they have these land acknowledgements. My kids went to Ida B. Wells. I had 2 kids that graduated from Ida B. Wells. And don't disrespect this woman. Don't change the name of the high school and then not act on anything that she stood for, because that's not respecting her. That's just using her memory to pretend that you're going to build, this more inclusive world where you're going to actually care about people and care about their struggles. And I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, folks. It's virtue signaling at best.
If it doesn't mean anything to you, if her life as a Black investigative reporter doesn't mean anything to you, I'm actually surprised that I haven't seen the Wilson newspaper cover this protest. Let the kids talk about important issues. Let them start having these conversations so they can build that better future together, and they don't have to do the pretending that the adults want to keep doing, because that's not a pathway to a better world. And I feel like that's a lot of what we get now from global leadership is, we're going to build this nice new inclusive world, diverse world, but we're not going to include everybody in that. And me and my husband feel that acutely, because as we stand out here week after week, and
we are being literally
ignored by
not just by the community, not just by our leadership, but by the media, by the politics, by the medical community. I mean, we're being treated like we don't exist at all.
So, and how does it help to say that certain stories don't matter? I mean, all these stories matter. When I was watching this show yesterday, Take Care of Maya, all of these stories should cause us to stop and say, how can we do better for people? How do we make sure that people don't end up miserable and broken? How do we make sure that, families are able to heal and come back together and that they're not ripped apart? How are we making sure that communities can heal and come back together and are not ripped apart? Because that's how we can build, the future that our leaders claim we're supposed to be getting out of all of their new policies, which, like I said, I don't see any of it actually happening. I see lots of virtue signaling and literally zero to no action. It just seems like things get worse. And I know that this next little thing that we're going to do, these camps, whatever, I know this isn't going to go well, because it doesn't include, actually caring for the people that are in harm's way. And it's just something that's missing throughout our entire society. People are more isolated and broken than ever. A lot of that has to do with technology, but a lot of that also has to do with the leadership that is modeled every day all over our TVs. And it's funny to me when people tell us to be quiet, because I'm like, well, you barely even ever hear us. You hear us once a week on Wednesday and we go away. And in fact, the only reason you're hearing us once a week on Wednesday is because what it comes down to is we don't exist really within the community besides up here. You know what I'm saying? Like, whoever owns the media, they have their agenda, they're going to do their thing, and they can continue on. I don't think violence is the way at all. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's what I have to say to our public officials, because as things get worse, and they will, more and more people are, if people want to learn lessons the hard way, okay, this is going to be the hard lesson. But you're going to see the city continue to fall apart, and I think we're going to see the world continue to fall apart, because there is no focus on actually taking care of people. And I was just listening to, I've been reading and listening, because I kind of like to do both. But Civilized to Death by Christopher Ryan. And one of the things I have to say, he has a lot of good things in that book, but the one thing that bothered me is, his conclusion is if we get the population down to 100 million people, we'll get back to being nicer to one another. No. You know what I'm saying? It's like the Titanic, how, and it's interesting that we have this Titanic expedition lost right now, because it got me thinking about that movie, how in the end, they didn't even fill the lifeboats. The rich people just kind of took off. And then at the end, they just waited for an absolution that would never come. Because, once you've done something like that, you won't ever feel good. So that's kind of what's happening, I believe, within the collective consciousness, which is why we are seeing such a rise in mental illness and suicide, is because the more we ignore one another, the more we don't care for people, the more people are abused and disregarded and left to the side of the road, the worse things get. The suffering just goes up and up and up, because we are all interconnected. So you have people like King Charles and the Weef, and they're talking about, we're going to save the planet because we're all interconnected, da-da-da-da-da. And they're leaving out the people. They're leaving out the people as if that can be done. I mean, we are all a part of this body. We are all supposed to be helping one another, and to say that people don't belong here, or their voices should be stifled, or we're not going to listen to certain voices, that doesn't work at all. What we're supposed to be doing is dealing with the reality around us, and trying to take care of everything that's here. I look at the planet as like God's house, and you're here to help. That's the way I look at it for myself. That's how I've always kind of viewed my life. When I'm out there taking care of people, when I'm out there taking care of my family, taking care of the people in the elderly community, I mean, it's everybody's job to lend a hand in this grand project, essentially. And that's what we're taking for granted as human beings, is we're all here to actually help take care of the life. And if we turn our focus on that, we're going to see things get a lot nicer on the planet. I very, very, very much believe that down to my core. Many of you will disagree because you think you're living on a finite planet and there's just no way we can all be here. And I mean, it's just silly.
It is really silly.
It's just silly because, I mean, the more you take care of people, the more they are going to be able to participate, help, and be a part of society. If we are building a place where people can live happy and healthy lives, if we can negotiate that goal globally and we can all help out on that, that would be nice. I would love to turn human history around. I'd like to start here in Portland, though, because this is the interchange me and my husband had with the leadership, and we wrote quite a few court briefs where essentially what we were saying is you need to value the life. And our big question since this happened to our daughter is why they didn't value the life. Because that's all we're really here to do. And even in the last few years, I mean, we've lost some people that are very dear to us. We just lost a cousin. She was only 22 years old, complications from type 1 diabetes. And, I lost a cousin to alcoholism. I lost another good friend. This is all during the pandemic, to a terrible trucking accident. The fact of the matter is
You lost the next door neighbor
to suicide. Yes, I'm watching mothers losing children all the time, and parents losing children, and communities losing people. And what we can do is be a lifeline for one another. But that's a conversation that we need to start having, that our leadership is not going to have, because they've already decided that people are a problem. That's why their best ideas come down to, we'll give somebody 2 snacks and a tent. When that is not the society we built. Here in America, people were raised in homes. I mean, I don't know when we ever got to just throwing people out onto the sidewalk and then just also ignoring people in their homes. Lots of people live completely depressed, surrounded by garbage, just in their homes. And I almost feel that way, you know, about the wealthy elites, because they surround themselves with so much stuff, but it's all so meaningless. Especially when you're living on a planet where there's so much suffering, so much poverty, and it's all so very unnecessary, except for this constant greed that we can't seem to let go of. Also, just trying to acknowledge, you know, what we're up against. That's what I find with our public officials. Something goes wrong in the system, they're not willing to take a deep look at it and figure out where they need to fix it. No, they just want to protect what they have. So that's protecting their right, really, to just steal from the community and be in a position of power. And that's very unfortunate, because we can't grow. We can't grow when we have people like that in power.
It is. It's stifling the growth of our entire race of beings. And that's who we have in power. Folks, we have been playing a Monopoly game. The winners have won. They're, they're rolling us around the board on credit. And their plan is to get rid of all of us, because that's what happens when you win the game of Monopoly. In order to win the game of Monopoly, you have to kick everyone else off the board. And that is what they are getting ready to do.
It's just because they don't see people as what is actually valuable. And if you look through human history, this really is a constant theme. It's not a new thought. It's, oh, these people are the problem, or these people are the problem. And that's why I like to, make sure that we're talking about the fact that, you might see the homeless people surrounded in garbage and junk and using drugs, but trust me, there are people behind closed doors in mass doing the very same thing. One of the things that's really missing from society is, people really need like life coaches their entire life. I mean, we're not doing a good enough job connecting with one another, and now we've introduced all this AI. I think about when Qadira was burned to now, and just the sheer amount of social media. I mean, this fight for us really happened as social media was growing, and the disconnect is even worse now. The new bright idea is to have AI answering non-emergency police calls. This is just going to be another thing that's going to make people feel disregarded.
Also,
right?
Noah Yuval Harari would like the Bible to be rewritten by AI.
And
these are ideas that these people are just going for, and we're not even getting to discuss what is going on this planet as an entire race of beings. It's really just what the people in power, or what the money worshipers, or what the people with all the money are saying.
They're just money worshipers. And I mean, I know a lot of people might reject that term, but I mean, money worship is a serious condition. It's a serious condition because people who worship the money, they're going to follow it right off a cliff. They don't really care where it's taking them. And
they're going to lead us off that cliff if we continue to follow them.
You see that conversation with AI, because it's just like, okay, this AI is becoming very dangerous, but let's go off this cliff anyway.
Yeah, let's continue to develop it.
And just
without having a real, genuine conversation about it and including everyone in it.
If it can make somebody some money, they're going to do it. And that again is why I feel so strongly about, kids. Kids really need to be getting this education, because you can be sold anything. So when we're talking about, the age of consent laws, just remember it's a very predatory world, and doctors will sell you anything. Your elected officials will sell you anything.
And they will sell anything to a child as well.
People will sell, and they're selling things to people's parents, so the child will ask for it, and so on and so forth. It's like, now that we live in this technological age, we're all living in a giant ad, right? This is a giant ad for whatever they want you to consume, and they want you consuming all the time. And they want to decide what you're consuming. So, they don't want you consuming this, so this will never hit the news. And I think one of the reasons it doesn't hit the news is because, as this has gone on...
Why do we suck?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about what's bothering us and the abuse of our daughter, which happened in this community. Oh no, yeah, that's exactly the attitude that's going to that is destroying our world. Thank you, sir, for representing yourself to the public.
Anyway, I mean, that is the attitude. I'm kind of glad people walk by and act like that because, you know, that's the all-pervasive attitude in humanity right now. That's how we treat one another. Oh, well, yeah. You suffered. Oh, well, I suffered. He's going to suffer. You're going to suffer. We're all going to suffer. As a matter of fact, let's all build hell together so we can all suffer. Together. That's the attitude because the older generation suffered, so they want the younger generation to suffer. Sir. We're what?
He said that we're crazy.
Okay, you know, I'm good with that.
Because we are having a real problem with the leadership here in our community because we had a profound experience, not just with this community, but with everything that is, you know, covering it. We're crazy, right? It's not. So this is like serious gaslighting, right?
And that's what we were always told. Oh, you don't think it's okay to play naked games with kids and burn them with tea?
Oh yeah, no, that's completely acceptable, right?
Yeah. No, I mean we've been told we're a problem because we don't accept that, which is to me, oh, you're not okay with a hospital
not treating
throwing a burnt out child out to die. Oh, you're crazy, you know. And I think a lot of parents experience this. You know, they're trying to fight for their child and they're told they're crazy, you know, and that is that's just a tactic, and I've seen it used over and over and over and over, and it's very sad because I think a lot of people end up giving up, you know, trying to protect their child, just as this woman in this movie, Take Care of Maya, she gave up on trying to protect her child. She decided that her child was going to suffer for all of her days and that she was going to suffer watching her child suffer. So she hung herself, you know, and I'm sure she's not the only one. There are so many people being so affected by this broken system, and we don't ever want to talk about how it's broken. It's not the best system in the world for taking care of people. And if we acknowledge what's actually happening out there, you know, all these people becoming homeless, the rise in mental illness, the rise in suicide, in not just children, men, women. I mean, if you really take a close look at what we have going on the planet right now, and you take a collective look, no, we have not built the best systems in the world, not for caring for people. So, I mean, continuing to go down this path is dangerous.
Very efficient systems for caring for money.
Right.
But that's the focus. And we need to start asking ourselves, how come a society that we live in, human beings, that we built is not about us? That's a very, very important question that we all need to start asking ourselves. Why isn't our world about taking care of us? Why is it constantly about something else?
You didn't turn it off, did you?
Turn what off?
Oh, this.
No, I don't.
This. Oh, okay, how do I turn it back on? So I have one more article I want to read today. And it's about a business owner who's leaving Portland for good because he feels that it's been destroyed. Hold on, let me turn this on. This is a really sad article. And I'm kind of reading this for the business community because I think some people think they're insulated because they've got, you know, some in with whoever they've got an in with. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, what's happening to America is it's being destroyed so the wealthy can kind of come in and take their pick of where they want to be. So let me see if I can get this working here. It won't work. I'm trying to get it working. It kind of made me sad to read this guy's story because he kind of talks about how he lived all over the world and he chose to come back to Portland because he thought it was such a beautiful place, and watching it be destroyed, you know, it really broke him. And that's what I want people to think about. Is it working? Okay, so this is another article, and I think this is a really important article for everybody here. Developer pulls out of Portland after 4 decades. What does a property owner do? Ask Kevin Howard how he feels about Portland and his emotions run the gamut, but he's mostly frustrated as he pushed open the fence to his final slice of the city. This property was listed in January of 2021 for $795,000. Yesterday we sold it for $412,000, said Howard. A significant loss, but Howard says he has nothing left in the tank. The tiny piece of property off Southeast Powell Boulevard, a former pizza parlor, has been a nightmare for the past 3 years. The supposed homeless came in and kicked in the front door, and lived in it, said Howard. And I waited until they came out, and I had to board it up. But Howard says that didn't do much. They just broke in again and again, living inside and outside, even in his dumpster enclosure, which they eventually set on fire. Howard says he got nowhere when he called the police. I said, well, what does a homeowner do? What does a property owner do? And they said, call Central City Concern, said Howard. I said, what will they do? And they said, well, they will probably come out and give them a cup of coffee and some hot soup. Howard looked into hiring a security guard, but that was too expensive at roughly $15,000 a month, so he decided to get a fence, but the wait was 4 months. I said, why? And they said, because homeowners like Matt are fencing their property to keep the drug addicts and the homeless out, said Howard. So the trash piled up, and Howard tried to keep up, but it wasn't enough. Last summer, the city hit him with a nuisance fine of nearly $540. Howard paid the fine. A month later, he got an even bigger bill, the original amount plus a penalty. The city told him they had lost his check, so he paid the bill again.
Honey, I want to address this lady's comment.
Plus the extra $100.
A lady just drove by and said that what we are doing is environmental pollution. It's not a protest about how our daughter was abused, by the brother of a politician here in this community, and it was covered up by all levels of the government. That's not what's going on here. It's just environmental pollution.
Yeah,
we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to be able to actually improve our community or our society or global
we can't
human
acknowledge
culture
this
by tuning out all the problems that are going on in our world.
Let me finish this. Okay,
I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I'm going to finish this. It's like 2 more, and then we'll get back to that. So he paid another fine. 2 weeks later, they sent me another bill for $639.71, said Howard. I called them up, and they said, well, this might be a duplicate bill, but we've already put a lien on your property. The fence was finally installed, and Howard was able to clean up the property and eventually get the lien removed, but the drama dragged on for more than 6 months. I just remember the phrase, the city that works, said Howard. The city that jerks, I mean. How can you be this dysfunctional? KATU News reached out to the bureau that fined Howard, Development Services. They confirmed there was an error, telling us the issue was resolved and there's no outstanding balance owed. We also asked Mayor Ted Wheeler's office for an interview. Wheeler has been vocal about improving livability, reducing taxes and fees, and restoring people's faith in Portland. A spokesman told us that the Bureau of Development Services is not under Mayor Wheeler's portfolio. Commissioner Carmen Rubio's office did not get back to us. Kevin Howard shook his head as he walked through his now former property. In the last year, $23,000, $13,000 for the fence. Then there's the graffiti cleanup, painting the building, said Howard. He spent $23,000 in 1 year just to manage the mess. But Howard, who founded Northwest Self Storage and owned 70 properties over the past 4 decades, says it isn't about this one address. This was just the last straw. I've been all over the world. I lived in Australia for a couple of years. I've been to all 50 states and all over, said Howard. I came back to Portland and I came back to Oregon because I loved it. I loved the people, the greenery, the lifestyle. Howard became emotional as he turned to the boarded up building, a bittersweet ending to his life and work in Oregon.
Thank you.
So, I read that story and I think about what that lady just said.
Did you just say, who cares? Oh,
2 years, yes, thank you. I read that story. Yes, we have been out here for 2 years. Thank you. Over 2 years now. It's incredible to read that story, and then the woman comes by and she says this is air pollution. People telling their stories is not air pollution. People peacefully telling their stories is not air pollution. What we are trying to do is improve things, and the way you improve things is by coming and having conversations. We don't
it
have
happens, folks, with communication.
Yes.
And since our voice has been stifled in every other direction, in every other manner, folks, we should at least be able to come here and be heard without being abused by this community.
Because what does it mean for the future of Portland? And in fact, what does it mean for the future of the world when people can be silenced like this? Because this is actually what's happening here in Portland with Justice for Qadira. This is an incredible silencing. Nobody has debunked what we're doing up here. Nobody has debunked what we're talking about. Nobody has proven that this didn't happen. None of that has happened. We're
No, they just
ignored.
don't want to hear about it.
So who else are we going to ignore as we barrel into the future with the leadership we have right now, with Mayor Wheeler, with Gonzalez, Carmen Rubio, who obviously take their marching orders from, I don't know. I've decided.
Probably Phil Knight.
Phil Knight, Satan, whoever, that's what it feels like to me. Because it's like, okay, my child was burned up with scalding water from a tea kettle, feels satanic, looks satanic, nobody cares. That's been the attitude. I wouldn't say nobody in the community cares, but I'm talking about people who can actually,
there hasn't been enough
do something,
caring to actually,
about it. And what I'm finding
get us somewhere where we can have a genuine conversation about what actually occurred here.
And we should want to have a genuine conversation because nobody, I don't care what color you are, religion, race, creed, gender, any of that. I don't want you walking into a corrupt courtroom. I don't want
or a
you
corrupt hospital.
Right. I don't want you going to an attorney who lies to your face. I don't want you going to a judge who isn't going to do their job. I don't want you going to a doctor who isn't going to treat you, or who is going to lie to your face and tell you to do things that are going to harm yourself. Those are the conversations we need to have because
we do not need police here actively covering up crimes.
And let's talk about the fact that me and my husband, tomorrow, again, we have to get up at 8:30 and respond to a criminal citation for coming out here and telling our story. I don't see the people on the media running their mouths all day. Trump, Biden, all these people, they get to blah, blah,
Yeah, that's
blah
not environmental pollution, right?
Apparently that's not
They can blast that all over your television screens, your radios, and your cell phones. They could do that all day long.
Whatever their thoughts are, blasting.
I'm actually thoroughly disappointed with the amount of people who are plugging their ears. That is actually very, very disappointing.
It's just
for me as a community member that lives here in your community. I'm a community member. I'm your neighbor, for heaven's sake. You should want to hear what I have to say.
And it should matter. It should matter. And if it doesn't matter to you, then you are not really trying to fight for
what exactly
this
are you
diverse,
breeding
inclusive society. I don't know what Portland is trying to fight for. It looks to me that they're looking to build like a white utopia where nobody else can be here. But they're pretending that's not what they're going to build, so they're going to kind of sweep all the people of color out of here, but they won't say anything about it. All the undesirables, that includes the homeless people, white, black, doesn't matter. If you're not playing the Monopoly game right, off with your head, out with you.
But especially if you're a person of color, right?
And even if you are doing it, like me and my husband, we're taking care of ourselves. We work. We do what we're supposed to be doing. It ain't enough. It ain't enough. That's the point. You can still get swept up and no, you don't belong here. We're going to get the vision. This city is going to end up being, whatever those who are in power want it to be. And I wish Ted Wheeler and the gang would just tell us what's the deal. Tell
just
us
give it to us straight, right?
What you actually are doing, because it's
give us the real plan.
Yeah, you're not really trying to help the city. So that's what's unfortunate. So anyway, I hope people think about who Ida B. Wells is. I hope people think about this Kevin Howard and how he's leaving Portland.
And why?
And why he's leaving Portland. Because I want people to remember that even if you are a wealthy landowner, you might think you have a golden ticket, but you don't have a golden ticket to the WEEF accommodations, because that's for the real multi-millionaire,
Those
billionaire
are for the
class.
serious money worshipers.
Yeah,
folks.
and for the politicians who help them enforce their agenda. It ain't for you. So I see a lot of businesses here that I think maybe in 10 years won't be here. They're going to have to close up shop and get on down the road because y'all think you're insulated from this, and you're not. Me and my husband thought we were... we thought we lived in a world where there was, we thought we lived in America. We thought we had rights and all this and that. And after my husband, experienced discrimination at Nike, after our daughter was burned, after we actually tried to go get those rights and use them, we realized that that is not actually what's going on here. And it's very sad because that's what should be going on here. We have a lot of work to do if we want to actually build this country called America. We're not done building it.
No,
we
not even close.
So much
I feel
work
like
to
we
do.
haven't even started yet, actually.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do. I mean, I think we've made some gains, but there's a lot of backstepping going on right now. And unfortunately, we're in this really critical time in the world, too, where, you have this group of people saying, the planet's going to die in 7 years, so, let's all eat bugs and yada, yada, yada. But then
Get rid of everybody, right?
yeah, but then they're also throwing bombs all over the place. It's a very confusing time. And I don't think anybody, really understands what's coming for society right now, because there's so much we need to reckon with. Whether we want to have that reckoning, whether we want to face where we are and face our reality, that remains to be seen. Anyway, I think we're going to pack it in for the day. It's been an interesting day. Again, I encourage every Ida B. Wells student to really think about why your school is named Ida B. Wells, and talk to your parents about it, and ask them, why do we change the names of buildings when we don't really honor the people whose names that we are
Changing them to.
And when we don't really honor how they live their lives. Because if we're not going to honor these people, let's skip with the pretending. Let's just slap Woodrow Wilson's name back on there, which I also have to say, it's very interesting to watch people judge people in the past for their behavior when, the behavior in the future is really not so different. Because, when I see how nonchalantly people flaunt the Nike swoosh, it kind of turns my stomach, and I'm not trying to be mean in any way, shape, or form. But to me, that swoosh is a symbol of slavery, and it's a symbol of the acceptance of slavery, and it's particularly shameful that it's the black community that dones it really the most. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not. It's so inappropriate. I mean, it's so dismissive of our struggle, really. And I had to come to terms with that myself. Me and my husband did, because my husband worked at Nike, and we can both.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that I ignored that bothered me while I was working there, but I ignored it because I wanted to keep my job up there, right? But really, I should have been being a lot more vocal about what bothered me about the company.
Because how do we improve our corporations and our companies if we just allow them to do the virtual signaling with doing no changing?
Without actually acknowledging the pain and the suffering that they are causing and are
globally
inflicting on
millions, really.
And innocent people. I mean, people are just trying to live their lives.
You've got this... there's just this domino effect from the low wages in these factories, and how that impacts communities, impacts immigration, and impacts just the life experience that so many people here are having on this planet. You have so many people who are working practically day and night, and they're not being able to, even access basic goods and services. They're still living in, and there's no reason for it except for greed. It's like Phil Knight could easily decree, okay, I'm going to pay everybody,
a living
at
wage.
least the federal minimum wage over in my factories.
That wouldn't even hurt his profits.
But see, then, the greedy elites go, oh my God, all these poor people will have access to, stuff that I don't want them to have access to. It's all about control. control, and then it's like, oh, but we're running out of everything, so no, we can't let anybody actually live here, and it's silliness. And I just want to remind people that we're only in this consciousness together for a short period of time together. And as I watch people lose people close to them, children, wives, friends, when somebody dies, they're literally just ripped out of this consciousness, and you don't get to see them here anymore. And eventually our whole generation is going to be gone. Me and my husband will be gone off to this corner one day. That I can assure you of. That's written into the contract. We will die one day, and this won't be an experience we're having, but we're having this experience now, and it's what we do with it. And it makes me think back to that scene in the Goonies when, they're all down in the cave and they have a chance to climb up Troy's bucket. But what's in Troy's bucket? There's a world. Their world isn't there anymore. The Goondocks is gone. The Goondocks is going to be gone, and that's what I feel about Portland. Do we want to go up Mayor Wheeler's bucket? Or do we want to go on an adventure, and do we want to change things? I want to stay down in the cave and go on the adventure because I'm a Goonie. That's all I can say. I grew up in the biker that we have to go along with everything our elected officials say. We can still stand out here and voice our opinion, and that we're going to continue to do that. And we hope more people start to listen. But even for those who aren't listening, every time somebody comes by here and they plug their ears or they yell or whatever, I'm glad. It makes me happy to be out here because this community needs to see that. The kids need to see that racism. They need to see that hate. We need to pull back the veil. We need to expose it, okay? And so we're up here helping that get done, which is actually healing this community. And it might feel painful right now, but I'm telling you, this is the work we need to be doing if we have any chance of future survival, and keeping this place a pleasant, nice place for people to live. So with that, I think we're going to shut it down.
Folks, we are going to shut it down, but we're going to leave you with this, which is what we always leave you with, because it's the truth, and you need to hear it. Whether you accept it or not, that's on you. But this is the truth. It goes like this. I am the value.
I am the value.
You are the value.
You are the value.
We are the value.
We are the value.
We're not talking about money. We're not talking about gold or silver. We are definitely not talking about digital currency. Folks, we are talking about your very life. That is literally all that really matters, and everything else is relative. So, when we say this, we mean it, folks. Here it goes. I am the value. You are the value. We are the value. I am the value. You are the value. We are the value. I am the value. You are the value. We are the value.
Gotta learn this one, humanity. This isn't just for the village to learn. This is for everybody to learn.
Every single human being on this planet
we have to do. This is the work.
Needs to acknowledge the fact that they are actually sovereign free will beings with built-in authority, and they actually are what matters.
And we can do a lot better here on this planet and provide a much better life experience for people. We just have to start working on it with some real intention, and we need to start holding the wealthy elites accountable for, these ideas that they're just throwing out, into the ether, this dangerous ideology.
And they just want us to blindly accept.
Listen.
Do not blindly accept that there are too many people here on this planet. And don't accept that, folks. Because who's too many? Are you too many? Are they too many?
And don't accept that people, I heard Noah Yuval Harari saying that people are for nothing. People are hackable animals. This is dangerous ideology, which I absolutely refuse. I can't believe this guy is considered some great thinker and historian or whatever. No, that is not a smart thought at all. No, we are all interconnected, and since Kingdom Come, we've been hurting each other. Let's try to go a different path. Let's try to build a future for our children so when they look back, they can see an actual place where we changed and where you know, it wasn't endless war and endless suffering and endless treating people like they don't matter, because that's what history should teach us, that none of that works. Let's not bury our history. Let's closely examine why our history is so dark and bloody and what we can do together to start changing it. I know for a fact Portland's history would be different had the response to this been different. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you make choices every day, and with those choices come consequences, you know, and treating people like they don't matter always leads you to a dark place. Those are just the facts, because the more you hurt somebody, the more they are not able to participate in society in a way that is helpful, and the more they're apt to run out and go hurt somebody or tear something down, etc., etc., etc. You know, we need to start being very intentional, you know, with the life experience. So with that said, we're going to head home, and God bless everybody. We'll see you next week for week 104. Thank you, everybody. I even thank the people that came out here and acted like jerks, because I will pray for you. I will continue to pray for you, because I live here with you, and all I can hope for is that your heart is changed. Me and my husband aren't going anywhere. We are embedded in this community. We will be in this community. We will show up to court tomorrow. We will see if Pontius and his group arrives. I don't know if they made it, you know, here to this timeline with us, but they may show up, just because they're so angry at this horrible air pollution that we are putting out there into the world of, you know, take responsibility for your actions and treat people like they matter. People, it just burns their ears to hear that, but we're going to keep saying it. So thank you, everybody. You are the value, and we will see you next week for week 104. God bless.
And we will be here, folks. I really hope that people start opening their ears to what we are saying, because they need to hear it. Not only do you need to hear what we are saying, but you should be listening as well.
Thank you, Multnomah Village.